Thank you so much for joining me, Andrea. Hi, everybody who is with us today. I'm Samantha Montanaro. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tokeativity. And today I'm thrilled to have a conversation with my guest, Andrea Beaulieu, the founder of Studio Linear. Today we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask some questions to Andrea about her journey from being a wine mom to becoming a weed mom. When I met Andrea, we were amazed at how much we had in common. We're both graphic designers, visual communicators, artists, musicians, and moms. Studio Linear is a creative agency that now specializes in cannabis and CBD branding. Andrea boasts 15 years of top-notch skill sets in visual communications, branding, and package design. And she uses her background in horticulture to pull in style elements of the natural world into a mixed media collage style. I'm completely obsessed with your design style. I think it's so beautiful and bold, and we'll talk more about that later. But Andrea is definitely not new to the game here. She's worked with clients like Google, Dropbox, The Lost Kitchen, and many other brands in the music industry, food and beverage industries. Recently, her agency made the switch into the cannabis space, and so did Andrea. So, Andrea, how did you come to cannabis, or rather, how did cannabis come to you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I can't stop smiling. So I in high school definitely experimented with cannabis, and it's not something that, wasn't far. I was like a child of the DARE program. Like, I was in another session I heard someone talking about, and um, it was something, that I used in college because I went to music school. So of course that went hand in hand. But when I became a mom, a lot changed for me. I think a lot changed hormonally. I think I became more anxious. Everything revolved around this human, and THC just wasn't really hitting like it used to. It would make me a little bit more paranoid. So I had to step back, from using cannabis. And it would be something my husband and I would try here and there, and I'd smoke, with friends off and on. But really, it was something that I had to stop, and I turned to, wine became such a normal thing for moms. I feel like it was something that, um, you know, 4 or 5 o'clock, if you've had a long day, it was completely normal to have wine. And so I shifted from, from cannabis to wine. It would help me relax. So, and then I pivoted back, but that's a quick story.
Yeah. Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, I can completely relate. When we first chatted, we totally, connected on that. I'm really trying to kick it back a notch where I actually just kind of finished my CBD kombucha cocktail that I make in lieu of wine now. Called it when it is to cook dinner for my son. It really is truly one of my favorite things ever to like be making. I love making like mushroom risotto. And when you make the risotto, you like use a little bit of white wine, you put a little bit in there with the onions and the and then you hit the bottle and you're like, this is amazing. Like I'm having a and then the next day when you're like waking up with your kids, you're like, maybe I'm not so stoked right now. So anyway, I am in my own journey of starting to put down alcohol and really choose cannabis more frequently. Um, but you quit entirely. So can you tell me about the day that you quit drinking and like tell me about what kind of led you to that? And then talk a little bit about what you've done. Like, I think this is something a lot of people are like, oh, I could never quit drinking. And it's like, it's these stories that like help people actually like, yes, I could. And here's how. This is what I'm going to do, or this is something I'm going to try at least. So if you could share a little bit about what you've experienced, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought, my drinking was normal. I would compare myself to other people. I'm like, well, at least I'm not that bad yet. And I think that's how I normalized it, in that consumption. And I was not a very social drinker. It was something that definitely was done at home, and it was done to relax. but I noticed that it was something that I started to depend on. And it was that dependence that really started to make me a bit nervous. I've seen alcoholism in the family and noticed a pattern that was scaring me a little bit. At the same time, it was almost like a perfect storm, kind of similar to Melissa's story in that it felt like everything happened sort of at once and led up to that moment. COVID hit, and I have autoimmune as well. I have RA, I have Hashimoto's, and everything seemed to sort of get worse. The anxiety around COVID and having children, and that it was terrifying. And I noticed that my health was really being impacted heavily. As I was getting more nervous and everything felt like it was kind of spiraling out of control, I drank more. And I noticed, one night in particular, it's kind of similar to Melissa's story when I was listening to hers. I was like, whoa, I felt my heart just pounding. And I actually thought I was having a heart attack, for real. And my daughter, who still co-sleeps with me, was co-sleeping, and I looked over at her and saw her little curls, and I just laid there thinking, "What the hell am I doing? Is this it? Like, what if, I'm 41, I suppose I could have a heart attack," and I started thinking, like, this can't be it. Like, there's more to life than this path that I'm heading down. So the next day, I truly like, that was that moment at night that I was like, "I have to stop." The next day, I ordered this book called Quit Like a Woman. I had heard about it. I'd heard about the community around the book. I'm spacing on the author's name right now, but the book was profound for me. It was profound, and I like to over research and analyze everything, which also was just brought up in another session. And so I loved the book and how it shared details about how alcohol affects the body, and it helped me find the strength to stop.
That is so powerful, and I love that reference, Quit when I need to get that and just read it. I love reading books, and, just as it is with cannabis where you get more empowered in your use, the more educated you are around how and what to be using, just the same that can help with quitting that, so that's really cool. Um, you know, your your background, like, kinda tying this into, you know, your work stuff, because this is really interesting because your background is in visual communications, branding, marketing, and some of your clients were in beverage industry. So, like, you're yeah, so this is so interesting. I know as a designer myself, I'm often put in the moral situation of like, I am creating something that is going to make people want this. Can I morally support this? And for me as genuinely a social justice warrior, like, it's really important to me that the things that I am sharing and supporting are legit, and they're there because they're going to help humanity. And when you have a kid and you're raising a kid and you want the future generations to be amazing, right? So you're like creating branding for like marketing the rose all day wine mom.
Right.
Um, can you talk a little bit about that and, like, tell me about what's, annoyed you so much about that?
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. So that actually was a huge part of the quitting, and it really started to bother me, that message to moms, the rose all day, or that you had to drink to cope with parenting as if we weren't strong enough to handle it ourselves. That messaging really started to bother me. And you're right, some of my biggest clients were in the beverage industry. So I would be designing, for different wines and ciders, and they would send me their products to sample. So it really was a challenge to decide to stop drinking. I knew I would have to say goodbye to these clients. These clients, though, were some of our biggest clients, and I support my family. My husband's amazing. He's a stay-at-home dad. So, my paycheck, or how, I support the family heavily, is dependent on the clients. So to say goodbye to some of these biggest clients was a really scary step in an unknown direction. But it was a step that needed to happen. Like you said, I did not feel right branding and packaging wine to moms if I myself was having a hard time swallowing that message. How could I be okay with doing that? And that's really when I made the switch to cannabis. I mean, we've been designing in cannabis industry for a while, But that's when I really looked at my dream client, and it was the cannabis client.
How are cannabis clients different than wine clients?
Well, I mean, I f I feel like, the wine market is, it's so heavily dependent on the label. You go to Target, you scour, the shelves, and I make a lot of my purchase based on packaging like most people do. But with cannabis, I feel like the message there's something more there. So our cannabis clients are truly looking to heal. They're looking for the benefits. And so the design and the marketing, you get to reference the benefits of the plant. So there's a big difference there. One is a bit toxic to the body, and one is extremely healing.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. That's interesting to think about too, that yeah, like in branding, we're, communicating, you wanna communicate the energy of something, and so that's really interesting to think about. Um, I'd love to talk about cannabis branding trends and like what you've been experiencing and where you think the industry is going. And maybe like, can you give us an assessment of your opinion of like the cannabis industry's branding kind of overall, like trends you're seeing, things you like, maybe things you don't like, and some ideas for the future of like where you'd like to see it go?
Sure. I mean, I really like the shift and where it's going. I mean, I feel like the days of the stoner bro look, the tie-dye, that look is long gone. At least I hope. I hope the clients that we work with, that's long gone. The clients that we're getting now are looking at cannabis as a lifestyle brand. It's not just a product. It is a ritual. It is something that we're incorporating in our daily use. I mean, I have it sitting right here. I use CBD
Yeah.
CBG oil, because I have a creative brain, it seems to be firing nonstop, and so CBG oil really helps me focus. So we're finding clients that want that message conveyed, and I love it. The branding that we're doing it's feeling elevated, more premium. It is aligning with what women, are purchasing, and
Mm.
not to say that everything is high end, there's a really nice mix. We're seeing different products, which I really like. A lot of our clients, are women. We're completely blessed there. And they're starting up companies because they saw in the industry there was room for something new. And I love that. I love that our clients are innovative. They're thinking of these new lines, these new products in CBD. It's thinking beyond just the tincture, and coming up with some really cool edibles. And I'm excited to see where the industry goes beyond this. I am seeing, I am hoping that there's a digital shift, like a virtual experience that's going to follow this. Think like virtual dispensaries, or getting into designing NFTs, and there's a whole nother virtual element to cannabis that is really yet to be tapped into that excites me tremendously.
I love that so much. Um, how does it feel for you as a mom now that you're doing cannabis branding? Can you talk a little bit about, um, yeah, like how is that different, right? Like I know, I mean, I'll share some things maybe about my son after you share your story. I have a almost 13-year-old now, and I work in cannabis. So, part of working in cannabis is having a conversation about plant medicine. So can you share, I'd love to know like how it feels for you at this point too, because you made this shift because you were like, this is, I can't even like feel good with my child with this
Yeah,
choice that I'm making, right? So I'd love to hear your kind of thoughts on that,
definitely.
your
Yeah,
parenthood.
I have some funny stories. I mean, I have an 11-year-old and a 4-year-old, and so they are definitely familiar with my conversations with clients. I'm very open as my husband. We use CBD oil and different cannabis products. But there's been times that I've been, in Photoshop cropping out a leaf, or looking at, different resins. And the 4-year-old has walked by. I'm like, oh, is that honey? Or my son, he's seen me working in the industry for a while. And so he's had a lot of questions. And I feel very comfortable telling him, about cannabis. I feel like we're raising the next generation that will be informed, and um, My parents were amazing. I mean, they didn't we weren't in a household, they were relatively strict. However, they were pretty open about it. I think, though, that this next generation is going to see, this is part of our daily use. And so I think that my son likes to tease me about it. He's like, I have like pot earrings, and he's like, "Mom, don't wear those out." And so for
You're like, "Oh, I'm wearing them out. Look at these ones I'm wearing." I have the Tokeativity ones on right now. They have the
yes,
Tokeativity weed leaf with a
right,
star.
right. I just think it's great. And actually, my son, I have ADD, and I can see some similarities, and we have some tendencies that are quite similar. And though they're not, my son isn't using CBD yet, I have been thinking about, using that to help alleviate
Yeah.
anxiety and just help him focus on testing and things like that. So we're pretty open with our kids around the product.
That's so great to hear. And yeah, I've also made that choice with my son, and it's been an evolving comfort level for me over the years. When I first started working in the cannabis space, Carmine was 5, just turning 6. And so then it was kind of like really in the bucket of like, this is mommy's medicine. It goes with these other things. This is, not for children. And it's a plant, just the same as these other things are for adults. This is for adults. And that conversation changed pretty quickly. Like I'd say by the time he was like 7, we were having a more of a detailed conversation about like, why is cannabis the way it is? And I remember talking to Carmine about, just like the racist drug war, and just really the war on people's liberation to choose what they would like for their bodies, especially a plant that's growing out of the earth that has not killed a single person um itself. Like the criminalization of cannabis has created crime around it. Like it's really sad to see, how this has all gone, and in turn has stigmatized the plant, and now we're unlearning that. So you're right. I get very excited thinking about the next generation. Carmine regularly, will, take, I will happily give him CBD. He asks for it, but it's sitting on top of the microwave. I have tincture when he's feeling aches and pains or just feeling really hormonal. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, or I sometimes buy the little CBD beverages. I'm like, do you want to share this with me? He'll
Yeah.
be like, "Sure." I'm like, "It's like blood orange deliciousness," or something, and he's like, "Great," and, we talk about it, and so that's very cool. Um, I would like I get very excited when I think about the future of cannabis because I think we're less of a focus, less of an emphasis. We are like CBD's all the craze, and now all these other cannabinoids are starting to come into the fold. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the genetics even available at the store start to change. Like I really do foresee, especially in certain regions, depending on the demographic of the physical location, there being like um just more cultivars on the shelves that are like less THC and more CBD, or like more of a, balanced. I love the comments coming in here. Yeah, cool. Yeah, like, sometimes the conversation, like, I feel like even if so Desiree is saying, like, we'll have the conversation one day, we're, respecting my old-fashioned husband. Like, I know it's like time and a place. Like, you don't, it's important that, especially for you and your partner, you're on the same page about what you're sharing with your kids. But you can also like I feel like you can also it comes up in conversation, especially, my son just started middle school essentially, right? I mean, he's in 7th grade, but he didn't go last year. And this is like the conversation around someone else might offer it to him. And I took that approach pretty early on with my family where I was like, and I told him, hey, if you want to talk about cannabis or somebody offers you something, you come to me because guess what? This weed queen is your mother. And like, I know all the stuff and I'm staying up on it. Right. And so like, I'd rather you come to me than you're like, what does your friend know, man? I guarantee your friend does not know as much as me. You know? And he did. He's come to me multiple times.
Good.
So it's like, and I'm seeing it work now. So I think that's so cool.
Awesome.
I would love to, if any other moms wanna come join us, like, I think it'd be really cool to open up the stage. You can request to join. Let's, like, keep this conversation going if anybody wants to come up. The Cannamom conversation. Danielle, I'd love to have you up here. Danielle wrote, Danielle Simone Brand, if she's still in here, she wrote the book called Weed Mom. Have you seen that book, Andrea?
Mhm.
Yes. Good. I love seeing it everywhere too. I was just at a dispensary in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the middle of nowhere, and her book was on the shelf, and I was like, "Yeah." Yes, sweet, here she comes. Awesome.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yes,
Hi.
I know. I was so 2 dispensaries, and they both had it. One of them was a woman-owned dispensary, and one was not, but they both had your book on the shelf in Marquette, Michigan.
Holy moly. Okay, I wonder if my friends from your Sarah Jane like had something to do. I've got to ask them because I've got some Michigan cannabis friends.
Cool. Yeah,
Holy.
Danielle, thanks for joining us. Like, and again, if anybody else wants to just get up here, you can like even keep your video off and just share via audio. If you're like, I cannot be on camera right now, that is totally okay. But you can still join in the conversation, just kind of like Clubhouse or something, like just come in with audio. Danielle, I'd love to, hear your just thoughts on kind of like what we've been sharing and Andrea's story and, yeah,
Yeah,
you
well,
live and
it's
breathe
like
this.
so relatable. Everything you've been saying, I'm like, yes, that is true. um, and interviewing Canna moms all over the US for my book, I heard so many threads, of what you were talking about. It's just really relatable. Um, you know, Leaning away from alcohol, and I mean, first of all, there's the medical side of things. There's a lot of moms actually depending on cannabis for their health and well-being, and then we have that whole leaning away from alcohol culture, like you were talking about. And I've read Quit Like a Woman too. It's a good book. It's a really, really interesting book. And I have a breakup letter to alcohol in my book too. Um,
I love that.
it's the preface, actually. It's Dear Alcohol. I have some difficult news. We're breaking up. And it wasn't from like overuse necessarily, but just the slow realization that, like, I don't feel good after alcohol. I can't parent my best. I can't wake up early and do what I need to do. Like, I just don't have time for that. And then, so that's like the recreational side. There's the medical side. And then there's all this in between too, that we're using, we're consuming for our well-being, not just to treat symptoms, not just because we want to relax that with that alcohol, but also because cannabis brings us to homeostasis and helps us feel good and parent more presently, more patiently, sleep better. I mean, that's a huge
Mhm.
benefit for me too. So yes, just what you've been saying, I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
Well, that's a huge you just made such a good comment that I forgot. It's about being present. I noticed such a difference before, when I was a wine mom. I would be very short, with my children. I would easily snap, and I would see, the side of me that I'm like, "Whoa," like, "Where did that come from?" And then the next day just be grumpy and just feel like a slug, and now
Mm.
I'm very present, but also, like, very excited, in any second that I get with it's a very different shift, and I just see myself it's like a veil was like, removed, everything seems a little bit more crystal clear now, and thank
Mm,
goodness,
mhm,
because time was ticking so fast, our kids grow up so fast. I'm really grateful that I was able to make the shift.
I love
Yeah.
that. One of my favorite things about cannabis is how it connects to, like, our inner child and brings that out in us. It has this, like, really magical ability to, I feel like, just connect into that space, and in general, I've been exploring inner child work, like, for my own healing and, like, um, looking at things, because when you start to look at patterns, you've got to go all the way back. You have to think about how you got here. And I love how cannabis taps in with with our inner joy. And I think alcohol is marketed to make us think that it does that. It's fun, right? That it's you're relaxed and you're having fun when you're drinking. And the truth is that you're disassociating and trying to escape.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, unfortunately, I think a lot of times we're being dissociated from also the good things that we don't want to leave. We don't want to leave the good things.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
numbing. It's really
yeah,
numbing. Yeah.
yeah. Where
Yeah.
then you have a situation like my cannabis lube experience last week where, there was definitely no numbing there for, well, like an interesting experience for like 24 hours.
Oh my God.
I wish that I had that cannabis enhancement stuff when I was pregnant or like postpartum. Oh my God. I wish I had that postpartum. That would have been a game changer for just making myself feel better, like not even necessarily for sexual pleasure as much as like just bringing back good feelings to that part of my body after going through motherhood. It really goes through a lot of trauma and it takes some time for the pleasure to return.
Mhm.
And cannabis has such an amazing, it's just freaking incredible what it can do. It's so wild. It is.
Another mom was saying that recently that I was talking to on a podcast about how after birth, she just felt like she needed to reconnect with her vulva, literally in a non-sexual way, right? And that,
Yeah.
and that CBD serums and stuff really helped her kind of like just have a relationship again with this part of the body that she was like, oh, there was a lot of pain, and I don't know if I want to necessarily, go there. But and then it helped her become, comfortable and sexually active again and stuff. It can do so many good things.
Yeah, I guess. Curious, have either of you smoked with your parents or consumed cannabis with your
Oh yeah.
parents?
Yeah. Yeah. My mom has her medical license. And so I used to call,
Nice.
I'm like, boy, have the times changed. I'm like, hey mom, so yes, I have, and not so much with dad, we've done camping and but yeah, more so my mom.
That's really cool.
What about you, Samantha?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
For
definitely.
sure.
I mean, actually kind of a funny story is the first time I ever smoked weed, I was like, this smells like my bathroom. And I like really honestly didn't put it together. I like really did not put it together. And then um the first time I smoked weed that same night, my parents like went out to dinner. This was like very classic young me. My parents like went out to dinner. I knew they'd probably be gone for like 3 hours. So I like was like, everybody come over. And there was like, 25 kids who show up at my farmhouse in Wisconsin. Someone set up a gallon bucket gravity bong on the trampoline. We were just sitting on the trampoline doing gravity bongs, and I smoked out of like this little metal pipe too, like just the tiny little like nut and bolt pipe. And I had a great time, my first experience. And my parents came home and they were pissed. Like, of course, I got all stoned and then kind of lost track of time and everybody was still around. And my parents were like, what? We go out to dinner and there's like a whole shit ton of high schoolers here. Like I was like 15 at the time. And someone had left that little nut and bolt pipe somewhere and my dad found it. And he was like, do you know what this is? And I was like, a nut or like a bolt or something. And he was like, no, it's a pipe. Are you stoned? And I was like, no. And he was pissed. Like he was just frankly pissed. And like I was just like, whatever. Like my parents, I've always had a really good relationship with my parents. And I was like, even if it gets a little curmudgeon-y about whatever, I was like, okay, dad, whatever. Like I was definitely kind of always bucking my dad, especially, and just being like, whatever, I do what I want. And I went to college and I don't know, it was some time in there. My parents got divorced when I was 17. And like my sister was like, yeah, and do you know dad smokes weed? Like he's like a stoner. He's a total stoner. And I was like, what? You know, like, are you serious? I was pissed because I was like, he yelled at me and he like made it a whole thing. He ended up keeping that pipe and giving it to my brother. It ended up getting back to the original owner like 7 years later after he took it. And like, so then I called my dad out on it and was just like, this is bullshit. You know, like you, instead of having a conversation with me, you shamed me for something that you were literally doing. And, you know, he was like, I was just afraid, like you have a kid and you don't want them to go, you don't want your kids doing a bunch of drugs is the truth. It just feels uncomfortable. And, you know, so, short, when I was 17, like I had gone to college and fell in love with a new style of music with really like rock and roll. And I called my dad and was like, I need a guitar. And he'd been trying to get me to play forever. And he was like, come home and I'll give you a guitar. And he ended up bringing me to a CSNY concert and we smoked a joint together, like in the crowd for the first time. And it was like one of the coolest moments of my life. And then he gave me my guitar that I've now written like all my songs on, and cannabis has been a huge part of my music journey. So it's like such a fun thing. And, you know, now when I go home, I bring my dad a big jar of weed and, you know, he loves coming out here and helping trim and stuff. And he grows every year. And yeah. Danielle, have you consumed with your parents?
Well, you know, so my mom lives in Canada. So when I went up there to visit her, this was pre-COVID. Um, we hit the dispensaries up there and definitely had some fun with edibles. We didn't smoke together. We had
Cool.
some nice edibles, and then my you know, kind of similar to you. I didn't find out until much later that my dad actually smoked weed while I was growing up.
Yeah.
And totally hit it because he had
Yeah.
stigma too, you know, and it was the 80s and that's just what people did. But yeah, so now we get to have like kind of phone sessions, which is fun.
Yay. That's so fun. Hey, anyone who's here, jump on stage if you want. We're talking about smoking weed with our parents. You want to share your story if you've smoked weed with your parents? You know, it's really inspiring because like, you know, as we think about consuming with our kids, you know, like in the future, it's just like, it's like really, it excites me. It really excites me. Hi, what's up?
Hi, I haven't seen you since you came to Baltimore. I'm sorry.
I
Hi, ladies.
know. That was
Um,
right before it was almost
like,
less than a year before everything just shut down. I went to Baltimore for the first time. I am so
yes,
glad you're here, Ayana. Thank you so much for coming. Have you
thank
smoked
you.
weed with your parents?
Um, yes. And well, it's odd because I'm right in the middle of two generations. So my daughter's 24. So we've all kind of like enjoyed together and tried even, you know, just maybe like a gummy or something like that. Like my mom's not a
Yeah.
big smoker or anything, but um you know, she's like, let me just see. I'm like, okay. And we have, and it was just like, oh, okay. I'm like, see, it's not the end of the world. You know, the gates of hell didn't open up and consume you. Like, it's fine.
You
And
got a
actually,
weed
my daughter
gummy.
was doing it. Yeah, it's fine. So actually, my daughter does it like, well, not does it a little bit more. We all like, we both consume daily because it's medicine, but it's just
Yeah.
like, it's weird now. She's like, I never thought I would just, you know, like casually come up to you and be like, hey, you have any weed? I'm
Can I
out. Do
get
you
a
have such and
nug?
such? I'm like,
Yeah.
you don't have to hide the smell. We're on the back porch. Like, so it really is like freeing and fun. And it's I kind of knew I was onto something when before she passed my grandmother, I introduced it to her through CBD. You know, the older you get, the more ailments and like things hurt. And she, you know, her and my grandfather always kind of did alternative medicine in a way. Like he had garlic water like stored in the refrigerator for his like cholesterol. And I used to like, ew, what the hell is that?
Wow.
Like it was like he was old school with his, you know, he hated medicine too. So it wasn't, you know, but she also came from an era where a lot of her children were like the not her children, but you know, the crack era where you did see what, you know, you were drummed into it's a gateway, it's a gateway. So she, watched neighborhoods decimate through the crack era and things like that. So my grandmother was really hesitant about it, but she only went as far as like topicals, like for her, I think for her knee. She did like an oil or something, and she asked about it before when it ran out. I'm like, oh, okay, really? I know that's as far as I can
Yeah.
get with you, but that is a start, because she loved like vitamin E oil on scars
Yes.
and aloe for burns and things like that. So it was always plant medicine around. It was just weed was the bad one. It was the devil's lettuce. So
Yep.
we've come a long way. But yeah, I say I've had the pleasure
Yeah.
pursuing with like
It's
all generations, millennials to boomers. We're here. So
It's so special. It's so
mhm.
special. Thank you for sharing that. And I've had the pleasure to like when my sister got married in Portland, my whole family came out and I was hosting a puff pass and paint event at my house, weed and painting class. And I was like, "You're all coming." And like, and they were like, "Okay." And my grandma smoked weed for the first time there, and my brother held the pipe while like I lit it. We like in the whole class that was there was like, "This is amazing." Like we're witnessing like an 80s, I think she was 83 at the time. And my niece started consuming cannabis. She's still a teenager, but she like reached out, and this past summer when we were back, we had multiple generations sitting around the fire pit sharing a joint, and it was like it's probably one of the most familial. It feels such a natural, familial thing to do, right? Like the sharing of cannabis is so familial. It just feels like it feels ancestral. It feels like something you should be doing with your people and with everybody.
I love that.
Oh my
The
God.
bottle around forever. It's time to can, pass blunts around forever. So, and I'm not opposed to wine or alcohol. I still do indulge and love it as well, but it's something, it's different. It's different. Plus it's just like you never thought it would happen. Like you couldn't pay me to think that this that we would get to this point, but we're here and I'm excited about it.
Oh, hell yeah. This tapestry that's hanging behind me, actually, I bought that when I was 17 and had just moved to college, and it's come with me everywhere over the years because I'm like, that girl would never fucking believe this. Like, she would be like, no way. Like, yes. I know I really can't wait to grow up. Like, this is gonna be awesome.
Oh, I love that. I wish I had that tapestry and not this blanket. That is an awesome tapestry.
Yeah,
Your
who could
blanket
have
looks really good.
predicted that we'd be here at this moment? Like, yeah, back in college when
Yeah, Carmel.
yeah, just
Oh, oh my
and
gosh. I
yet
love
it's
this.
so long overdue. So long overdue. Both.
Well, we're here, and here's the truth. There's a long ass way to go. Um, I'm in Portland. I feel like I'm in a bubble. I know y'all are in different locations. It's like it's really different in every location. Here, Portland is such a weird, like liberal space that it like I feel like anything fucking goes here for the most part. Um, and but I go back home to Wisconsin and it's like, woo, I'm feeling a little bit different when I'm wearing my big ass weed leaf earrings, or when I notice that, oh my God, I'm wearing weed earrings, a weed tank top, and I'm wearing my like weed leaf fanny pack, and it's like maybe this is a little too much for Wisconsin. Like people look at me like I'm crazy, you know. So we have a long way to go, and that feels super exciting. Um, I know that I think this session ends right now, but I wanted to say as like a final thing before we wrap up, I'm just so grateful to be here with y'all. I just heard a statistic, I didn't know this, that there's about 300,000 people that are working in the cannabis industry in the United States right now. And I had never heard that number, and I should do my research, so if this is wrong, like, let me know. Or like, I don't know. I'd love to
Either, so I'm gonna go with it.
right? But like, say there's
I've heard that too.
300,000. This is so new. Are you kidding me? This is going to be wild. There are going to be millions of people working in the cannabis industry, and especially across the globe. There's going to be so many. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that many people. So we think about the demographics of the United States even, and then break that down by just the demographic, by skin color, and then even by location. This is why there's like 3 people in one city that are like doing what we're doing sometimes. It's so wonderful to connect with you. Keep going, like each one of you, keep shining your love lights. Everybody that's out there, like, good Lord, please keep advocating for the plant and for your own liberation and what feels good for you. This is about the self-healing revolution. This is about feeling better. This is about helping each other and being in touch with our earth too. There's so much more. This conversation, thank you, Andrea, so much for joining me, was, we touched on everything from being a parent, which is literally ancestry, creating ancestry, right? Like you are an ancestor. And you will be, and it's things are going to keep going. And the seeds that we're planting here together right now are really, I think, revolutionary and very, very beautiful. It's such an honor to be with all of you here today.
Thank you.
So
That was
cool.
beautiful. I think you just ended. That was so beautiful.
You can't top that.
Let's keep the conversation going next month. Every month there is a group around Cannamoms, and we have different guests that come and talk a little bit about their story, and then we get up here and just connect with each other. And I this is a favorite sesh always, because I think Cannamoms have always felt you do feel isolated a lot of times, like just no matter what's happening, and it feels great to connect. So all right, everybody. I'm excited to jump back over to the main stage, which I thought it was 5:50 that opened back up, but it is. Okay.
Okay.
Let's head to the main stage.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.